Yamji Jimbo Zodun Himi Jan Zoner Mulum Jimborga Gada Bagar Dargam Zando Shirmado Stomba Tuji Jala Kivsham Zar Onishan Roser Nijan Kamsa Jawar Tukishan of Yilla Jimmy Bunzo Jala Zoranda Gonja Tobam Power Shinjilo Gonja Tobam Power Shinjilo Gonja Tobam Power Shinjil
The answer path, profound and wonderful Dharma, is difficulty encountering billions of eons. I now see it, hear it, receive it, and uphold it. I vow to fathom the Tathagata's true meaning in order to liberate all sentient beings. Let us generate the supreme bodhicitta. Beginning from today, we will take 2 classes of time to study the Ullambana Sutra. I've translated this from the Chinese language to Tibetan language within 2 days during winter. Since I do not have the oral transmission of this particular sutra, so I won't be giving you the oral transmission. Rather, I am chanting it or reading it to you as a way to proofreading my own translation. This year, I have translated the Ullambana Sutra. Not sure how well I translated that. On top of that, I translated the Buddha's Bequeathed Sutra as well as the Sutra of the 42 chapters from Chinese language into the Tibetan language, because these 3 sutras are very important to the Chinese Buddhism, but it is not included in the Tibetan Tripitaka. Therefore, I've translated them into Tibetan language.
Pamani tarwala kote njo sowa dan tiet jang bi zhen zo gongso teni phogba lam ji kyan la teni jikten tamchit zigbar shi na rang ma teni yedag ji ne sa tong te zawa dang to chang marni ne li ripper chercha phogba dan ripa yang panzan da jera zam da ne bram tong di ze mongol ji vi shen de tyo ne mir de long zit ze ji kan te mi zhong kalawar tong Galavar Tertongo. Tertoni Mala Zevjano. Mejan Honze ki Zem Toma Tag the Lagba Yumbe Longzit Kapchang. Yepe Lani Zavr Zombana Kar Ze Karmatun Gonde Memdang Bajik the Kirte Zavi Tap Mamchi so. Terip Zumba Mungar TV Mernik Chimbon Dombada. Udonve Yikim Chima Jirkin Slariam Jondindi la tsirte jirtawa jindok sorto. Dene jondin di kindirkitab kartsarwa keki mi nibi tsawa shind zabe ket ganzak chikbin jember niba mayano keki ma lap kurtub gipi tsirindi njowar namgi sim goyo jan gurur shepa yun mo dertana yang namgi lhadang, si lhadang, jegdundang, shururwadang, nambadang, rgyarchin rigzhi la sobi kyobaran maniso. Di shir shukji gendun namgi shimta la tenni zut tarwa tobaran yuro. Dakka tenni kyopi tab lagbar tambe jigbadang dingwar tamchi charan yuro. 今天的那个藏文太大了，就是我也不是什么眼睛那么差。
The Tibetan printing that you printed for me is in very large fonts. Very large. My sight is not that bad yet. But thank you. Thank you for taking care of my sight.
跟大家就讲一下那个云南盆景啊。
Now let us continue with the actual class, the class on the Ullambana Sutra. This sutra is really well known and very popular in mainland China. I've looked into the history, but I couldn't find too much about how it got popular. This sutra was translated all the way back in West Jin and East Jin dynasty, which was about 200 or 300 CE. Roughly after the time or the period of time of Three Kingdoms. And then later on, around Tang Dynasty, Master Baizhang had included this sutra into many of his practice sadhanas. So it got really popular in China mainland area. It was rather very early at that time as well. I believe Master Baizhang was alive during the period of time circa 700 CE. So in mainland history, this sutra is very popular. Different monasteries, let it be from the north or the south or west or east, in fact, they would all host Dharma assemblies to make offering to the Sangha on July the 15th on lunar calendar, in order to liberate the parents of this lifetime and the parents of the seven lifetimes. In terms of the Tibetan history, I did not see the existence of this sutra. This sutra, I believe, is very familiar to many of the monastics over here or lay practitioners. And probably would chant it every year. Many different masters, they all have different sadhanas and practice related to this sutra. Of course, different monasteries have different ways of practicing this sutra. To my understanding, there are monasteries would host Dharma assemblies where they would circumambulate the Buddha, make prostrations, and then chant this sutra for 3 times, after which they would receive the offerings of the 10 directions. Later, they will then share the offerings to all the Sangha members. On top of that, there are different ways of chanting this sutra as well. This is, in fact, very good to make an offering to the Sangha on July the 15th on the lunar calendar. This is really great. In Larungar, in fact, we also would include such kind of tradition of making offering to the Sangha. This is a very good tradition. In the past, I noticed that there are some Sangha members or our fellow practitioners, they don't hold the right attitude or right action in terms of making offering to the Sangha. I really hope that everyone could make the offering to the Sangha with a mind of admiration and respect. After this teaching, I hope that in the future, whenever it is the Ullambana festival, we can all make offering to the Sangha in different settings. If you don't have any place to find the Sangha members, if you don't have such methods to make offering to the Sanghas, at least you can chant this sutra, because making the offering to the 3 jewels, to the Buddha, there's really no difference. In some ways, we can see that the numbers of monastics are decreasing, including Sri Lanka, Myanmar, and Thailand. where they used to have maybe hundreds of thousands of monastics back then, but nowadays there are only about over a dozen thousands of monastics. Similarly, in the Tibetan area, there's a decreased number of Sangha as well. I mean, the monastics as well. I've seen someone who did this data analysis. He said that 10 years ago, when he visited some of the monasteries in Tibet, the numbers of the monastics were a lot, and many people would come to the monastery and make offering to them as well. After 5 years, the number had decreased to only about half, and we can see that it is the trend that the numbers of a monastic as well as the believers are decreasing. Living in the time of information, there is so much distractions outside. And it's hard to say what's going to be like in the future for the practitioners. And we can say that maybe in the foreseeable future, the numbers of the believers and the Sangha will not increase, rather it would decrease. On top of that, there will be a group of people, and there are a group of people who would pretend to be the monastics. With the help of the internet, they would uptake various kinds of inappropriate actions, such as they would ask for donations as monastics. For example, I've noticed that there are some of our Sangha members, they constantly would send out information such as, oh, this monastery is going to host an event where they would make offering to the whole Sangha, and the other monastery is going to make them chisel the money stones. And then they would post some of those QR code where you can scan and send money. They would say that, oh, there's a great master over here that you can make offering to. So I think for this kind of situation, we really need to observe very carefully to see who's really receiving the monetary offerings. Is it that there are people who's cutting some of those offerings to themselves? It's hard to say if they're doing it properly. Anyhow, I really hope the Khenpos and our Dharma teachers should pay attention to this kind of situations that's happening nowadays. A short while ago, I knew someone that after we give some teachings, and then there would be people asking for offering. And they would say that, oh, I work for so-and-so Khenpo, and I'm from so-and-so monastery or a Buddhist institute, and they won't even leave their names or any of those contact information. After they receive the money and offering, they would disappear completely. And it's hard to say what they're going to do with the money. If one were to have such kind of aspiration to make offering to the monastic, it would be the best for them to make the offering by themselves, so that you won't be taken advantage of by the others. Of course, such merit of making offering to the monastics is great. There is no doubt in that. On the other hand, it's hard to say if the monastic group is genuine monastics, or if the monastic group or the Sangha could actually receive the offerings. So I really wish that all of you could pay attention to observe and see if there are people who's practicing those fraudulent activities and deceive the others. There are many of the practitioners who do not engage in listening practice and contemplation. Rather, they are more like advocators, advocating for the others to make donations. In order to make sure that there is no such inappropriate actions. I really encourage the Khenpos and Khenmos do not pretend that they couldn't listen or hear. Sorry, I used the wrong word over there. Do not pretend that you cannot hear or see those inappropriate actions. It's really important for you to know what's going on. The reason I am bringing it up before the actual teaching of the Ullambana Sutra is because I don't wish to see a whole bunch of the QR codes would appear, would be sent to the believers or the Buddhist practitioners, and then a group of people who have hidden agendas would earn a big buck out of this teaching. I think lots of the followers nowadays are very superstitious. Let it be the followers or the so-called fans. A majority of them, in fact, have not developed the right view yet. They would follow whatever people would say, and they don't have the ability to observe and to make choices yet. At the Dark Age, when it comes to making offering to the Sangha, I think we should definitely follow the management rules that is used in the modern society. A little while ago, I've made offering to a certain monastery, and about a few days ago, I've received a receipt of their receiving of my offering, where on the receipt I can see about 7 or 8 people's signature. And from that receipt, I can see they definitely have a very good management system, and they're very strict in terms of receiving the monetary offerings, and they're very careful with keeping the wealth of the 3 jewels, and that's very good. Before I even started the teaching, I've scolded a whole bunch of people. This is really not good. Let us continue with the sutra. The sutra's title is Ullambana Sutra, and the Chinese translation of the sutra's title is the phonetic direct translation, which is Ullambana Sutra. So what does Ullambana mean? Ullan means hanging upside down, and bana means it's a container. Also, it has another connotation which means to save. Why is it named in such a way? Because Mother Galyayana's mother had been suffering in the hungry ghost realm, and in hungry ghost realm, there's this kind of suffering that is hanging upside down. So all kinds of pains and suffering in that realm. And bana means that with the container, one can make offerings in order to alleviate the sufferings of beings in that realm. So that's the explanation of the title of the sutra. Back in the West Jin dynasty, there was once a Dharma master whose name is Faju, and he translated another version of this sutra. However, I couldn't find that version of translation. There's another translation which was translated back in the East Jin dynasty, and the title is translated as "with the container to repay the kindness sutra." However, it's hard to tell who the translator was. It was not recorded, but the content is exactly the same as the Ullambana Sutra. According to Master Oi's record of reading the Tripitaka, he also recorded this as well. When I was translating Ullambana Sutra, I translated the title into the Sutra of Liberating Parents, which is the direct meaning, the direct translation of its meaning. Ulam means the mother that was reborn in hungry ghost realm, so the one that to be saved, and bana means to save. So to put this together, I translated in such a way. Of course, it is not to only pay the kindness and save the mother of this lifetime, but the mother and parents of 7 lifetimes. Therefore, when I was translating it into the Tibetan language, I've translated this into the title of the Sutra of Liberating the Parents. So we can understand the title of the sutra in such a way. I've spent a long time in contemplating on the title of the sutra, and I felt this is easier to understand. Now, in terms of the translator of the Chinese version, the translator is Dharmaraksha. His Chinese name is Zhu Fahu, and he was a Tripitaka master of the West Jin dynasty. Back then, the monastics did not take the surname of Shakya yet. They would rather follow the name of their guru, because he studied with his teacher who had his family name as Zhu. Therefore, he took his teacher's name, and Dharmaraksha was his real name. We know that back in Tang Dynasty, there is also another very famous master whose name is also Dharmaraksha. But before Kumarajiva, this Dharmaraksha is indeed a very renowned and respectful translator. He was born in the now Xinjiang province, and he got ordained around 8 years of age. Later, he studied with an Indian master. He studied lots of the classic literatures, within which period he demonstrated great wisdom. He could memorize over tens of thousands of verses a day, and he later developed great faith towards Buddha Dharma. He was fluent in the language of 36 countries. Nowadays, we would consider a polyglot with the understanding of 5 to 6 different languages as marvelous, but he spoke fluently of the language of 36 countries. Of course, back then, the 36 countries around that area could be small countries. However, because many of the places were not unified, therefore the language were different. Anyhow, he translated many different sutras, including the Lotus Sutra and and many more. When we study the Lotus Sutra, we use the Kumarajiva's Sutra, but when we flip through the list of the translations that he did, the catalog, we can see that he translated many sutras. Many of his sutras were not very popular. They're not used very often nowadays, maybe because of the language is a little too ancient. Therefore, it would be difficult for the modern people to understand compared to the other ones. Anyhow, Dharmaraksha was born around 231 CE and passed away around 308 CE. He was definitely a renowned translator, very well known as well as a respectful translator. Many great masters, including Master Taoan and lots of eminent monks, praised him to be a genuine bodhisattva. So Dharmaraksha translated this Ullambana Sutra, and it has been 2,000 years since then. His translation is still very popular. We can see that from such kind of a result that he must be a great bodhisattva. Otherwise, to have certain philosophy or certain translation to last for even a couple of dozens of years or 2 decades or 3 decades, it's very easy for them to disappear. Let it be the renowned politicians in history or scientists or some Buddhist philosophers. Maybe their thinkings and philosophies are very popular during their time of living, but after they pass away, then their philosophy would slowly disappear as well. But we can see the great masters, the great bodhisattvas, great translators, even as a short translation of the sutra, they translate such kind of translation could last for hundreds of years. And today, we are studying the translation by Dhamma-raksha. Ullambana Sutra indeed is quite an incredible text. I personally feel this way. Last year, I think back on September 2nd, which was the Ullambana festival. In terms of Ullambana festival, some of the Chinese tradition would consider as the festival of ghosts. And according to Taoism tradition, it is called the Zhongyuan festival. There are different names for this festival. I think it is rather a combination of the folk tradition and the Buddhism tradition. According to some records, it says that in the ancient India, the Indians also like to celebrate the Ullambana festival by practicing the Dharma. And later, this tradition was brought to China. People would celebrate this festival in order to repay the kindness of their parents, and that's why it got popular. The reason I translated this sutra was because I dreamt of my mother last year during the Ullambana festival. I dreamt of her. I dreamt of seeing her from her back, but not seeing her face at all, though I asked her of her in my dream. When I woke up, I was saddened because I thought maybe it's a sign that my mom was not liberated yet. So a thought came to me that if I were to translate the Ullambana Sutra, maybe I can repay the kindness of my parents of this lifetime. If they are not liberated yet. Hopefully, through the merit of translating the sutra, they can. And that's how I made this aspiration. Though this is rather quite a short sutra, I also supplicated to the Dharma protectors so that I can translate this sutra. I cross-referenced to lots of the commentaries of the great masters from China mainland, such as Master Oli and so on. After understanding the content, I made the translation. So this is the sutra. I hope everyone over here listening to this teaching, you can also chant the sutra in order to liberate your parents out of their suffering, to repay the kindness. When you're listening to the sutra and when you practice by chanting on the sutra, you should uphold such kind of aspiration. If you can chant it every year on the lunar calendars, July 15th, you can chant it and rededicate the merit to them. If your parents are still alive, you don't necessarily have to chant it for them. But if your parents already passed away, then you can chant it for them to rededicate the merit. Because of the blessings, the incredible blessings of the sutra, you can liberate them from their sufferings. It would be really beneficial to them. The sutra is indeed very simple, so I'm going to simply explain it in our classes. Just very briefly, we'll look at this sutra. Well, let's look at the sutra. It says, "Thus I have heard." Maybe because of the early translation, the translation was translated in Chinese in the order of "Thus have I heard." At one time, the Buddha was staying at Anathapindika's Jetavana monastery in Shravasti. In fact, the sutras that we've been studying in the last few years were all taught by the Buddha in the Jetavana monastery, because he stayed over there for 25 years. Whenever you have the opportunity, maybe after the opening up, you can all travel there and visit and see what this Jetavana monastery is like. Anyhow, at that time, Madhya just attained the 6 supernatural powers, and the first thing came to his mind was that he desired to deliver his deceased parents from an evil realm of rebirth in order to repay his debt to them for raising and nurturing him, repay their kindness. Madhya, according to some sutras, it says that after the enlightenment of the Buddha, after 5 years of enlightenment of the Buddha, Madhya attained arhathood. Some of the sutras said that there was once that Madhya and Shariputra talked or met Ashvajit, the bhikshu, and after receiving a stanza, the teaching of a stanza from him, Madhya and Shariputra attained the noble fruition of the beginners. And then with the Buddha's teaching, they finally attained the fruition of arhathood. Arhats all have the 6 penetrations, the supernatural powers, out of which there are the higher power, the divine eye, divine ear, telepathy, and such as remembering their past abodes and extinction of afflictions and so on. Anyhow, over here, because they've already attained one of the 6, because he had already attained the 6 penetrations, out of which one of them is remembering the past abodes and seeing the lifetimes. Madhya want to liberate his parents with this superpower. I think in our time, the parents are nowadays distancing with their children further and further, and it could get even worse from now onwards. Maybe it is because of the influence of some Western thinking. The children would eventually lose their gratitude towards their parents, and they would not be paying the filial piety and their duties to the parents. That could be very possible. However, as a Buddhist, I understand that maybe getting ordained and studying Buddhism is not necessarily the thing that your parents want you to do. But because this is really important to you, you don't necessarily have to comply to their thinking. However, at the same time, we should comply with the parents on other levels. You should call them and talk to them and care about them. I believe I was rather very caring to my parents. My mother lived over here for about 2 decades, during which we had never even argued a bit. I think that was good. However, nowadays, when I think back of the time that I've spent with her, I do feel a little regret as well, because I've never really spent that much time with her. Usually I would rush to come and see her and say hi and ask how she is, and then I would tell her that I'm really busy, and then I would run off. After she passed away, I often think of her, not only thinking of how she had carried me in her body for over 9 months, just thinking about how the mother nurtured us with her milk. Such kind of such kind of kindness we should repay is great, because milk is the essence of human body. We are nurtured by the essence of our mothers. Without such kind of nurturing from the essence of our mother, we won't survive. Nowadays, of course, people would switch to formula only after 1 or 2 months of breastfeeding. What I have, the information I've gathered and stories I've heard from some of the fellow teachers in my school is that they told me that they switched to formula very quickly. It's different than when I was young. I have 1 younger brother and 3 younger sisters. I was breastfed for 3 or 4 years, but once I had the younger brother, then I've lost my privilege of drinking my mother's milk, and it was only my younger brother's privilege. Later, when we had our 3 younger sisters, they had the privilege and we lost such privilege. This year, I got some time and wrote down some of my stories when I was young. While writing those stories, it really reminded me of all the little details when I was growing up. I think everything's very different now, and the lifestyle is very different now as well. Later, when you have a chance to read what I wrote about my memories when I was young, you probably would feel that you might feel that I'm a very strange person, because I started elementary school when I was 15 years old, and my younger sister got married when she was 15 years old. You might feel that I am living a tribal life just like the African families. Anyhow, when I was young, I remember that I used to sleep with my mother, and after I had a younger brother, I would sleep with my father, and when we had our younger sisters, my mother would sleep with the younger sister, and my younger brother would sleep with my father, and I would sleep on my own. So that's how we grew up. The age difference between among us are very even. We all have about 4 years apart. And when I think back of the time that we grew up, I genuinely am grateful to how my mother used her milk to nurture all of us and didn't let us die out of hunger or malnutrition. It is really because of the kindness of the parents. I feel that all mothers are great. Some of you probably grow up in very good family conditions, and some probably not. But the motherly love and the care that a mother extends to the children is incomparable by any kind of love in this world. But nowadays, there are practitioners, they would hold a grudge just because their mother or the parents would scold them or beat them when they were young. Things like such would happen nowadays. And I think it's a very silly action. It doesn't matter how your parents would treat you when you were young. Without their nurturing, without their care, you won't be able to be who you are nowadays. So by contemplating upon that, it's really important to reflect upon our duty and our filial piety that we should pay to our parents. Master Oyi quoted from the Sutra of Filial Piety. It was a little bit difficult for me to understand during translation, but it talked about if one were to repay the kindness of the parents, one should try to lead them to take refuge of the 3 jewels. If they really don't want to, you can use all kinds of skillful means to guide them and to lead them. Let it be threatening them or using any other kinds of skillful means. parents. You can cry in front of them and so on, and your parents would definitely have a tender spot for you, and they may slowly take refuge to the three jewels. Anyhow, over here it talked about how Madhikalayana, after attaining the arhathood, the first thing he thought of is to liberate his parents. This is really important lesson. I hope that all of you over here, if you were to have such kind of auspicious coincidence and causes and mature conditions, you should try to liberate your parents in this lifetime. And if you can't, at least you should chant the Avalokiteshvara's mantra and the sutra to liberate them. This is really crucial. After that, Madhikalayana viewed the world of transmigration with his supernatural eye. He discovered that his deceased mother had been reborn in the realm of hungry ghosts. And as there was nothing to eat, and she had wasted away to skin and bones. She's extremely skinny at that time. She was but skin and bones, because there's neither food nor drink. In the Prita realm, the hungry ghost realm, the different types of Pritas, they suffer gravely in the hungry ghost realm. Even as an arhat at that time, Madhikalayana couldn't do anything. And stricken with grief, Madhikalayana filled a bowl with rice and approached his mother to offer it. He went to his mother in the hungry ghost realm and wanted to offer the food to his mother. But his mother held the bowl in his left hand and took some rice with his right hand. At that time, not only the mother was holding the bowl, she was covering the bowl. And she tried to grab the rice with her right hand, but before the rice reached her mouth, it turned into a piece of burning charcoal, and she could not eat it at all. Because of her karma, she was not able to eat the food. Madhikalayana is the most supreme in the miraculous powers, as you can see from the sutras. Madhikalayana has the supernatural power where he can control the sun and the moon, and his miraculous power is as great as the Sumeru mountain. But even someone like that, like him, when he presented the food to his own mother, his mother could not enjoy that food. So we can see that everyone's karma is indeed really horrifying. Look at how much meritorious acts that's practiced by Madhikalayana. Even after he attained arhathood, he could not save his own mother. He could not give the food to his own mother. I believe he must have had dedicated his merit to his mother before, but everyone's karma cannot be taken away by the others. According to Kshitigarbha Sutra, it says that even the father and the son, who were the close family members, who were very close, however, once they were departed onto different paths, though they may cross paths with one another, but they cannot take upon each other's karma. So if you were to create some karma, then you have to take the responsibility for that karma. There's no way for you to take onto the other's karma. According to the sutra of the Vaipulya retention of Jewel Light Sutra, it says that the sentient beings would have to take their own karma and suffer for their own negative deeds, and that is not the fault of the Tathagata. It is not because that the Tathagatas are punishing the ones who practice misdeeds. It is not because that the God is punishing the sentient beings. It's not that at all. It is because that one who create the negative karma for themselves, they would have to suffer for such kind of karma. When such kind of negative karma ripens, it would be very difficult to change the course of such negative karma. Therefore, let us not fall into the three lower realms, because once you were to fall into the three lower realms, it would be difficult to be liberated in a short period of time. I believe that if you had studied the Kshitigarbha Sutra, you would understand that from the stories and the teachings taught within. Anyhow, previously we've studied that Madhgalayana already brought the bowl, his own bowl that's filled with food, to his mother and made offering to his mother, but the mother couldn't eat it. That's how the hungry ghosts are. Even after they received the food would turn into charcoal and ash. And Madhgalayana crying loud in anguish. I believe many people would do that when they get upset. They would cry out loud. I have that sometimes as well. When I get upset, when I get angry, it doesn't matter how much I try to control my expression, it would be very obvious. I noticed that lots of people would do that. Some people would run to me and say that, what do I do? What do I do? My grandfather's really ill. What do I do? And they would cry in the phone. They would say that my grandfather is ill. What should I do? I believe if your relatives, your close ones, loved ones got ill, you probably would get very anxious. But if it's someone that you don't know, you won't cry at all, isn't it? Anyhow, over here, Madhgalayana also felt deeply saddened and was very much in anguish. Stricken with grief, Madhgalayana cried loudly in anguish. He cried and screamed, probably as an arhat, and he then hurriedly returned to the presence of the Buddha and related to him in detail what had happened. So he told the Buddha, saying that what happened over there. He probably told the Buddha, saying that the first thing I wanted to do after attaining arhathood was to save my parents, liberate my parents. But now I can see that my mother is suffering in the hungry ghost realm. But the Buddha over here then said to him, don't worry, don't worry. The Buddha said to him, your mother's evil karma is so deeply rooted that it is beyond your individual power to alleviate it. The root of Madhgalayana's mother, of her evil karma is very deep. Into Master Zomi's explanation on Ullambana Sutra, he quoted from a sutra of a story back in Dipankara Buddha's time. At that time, Madhgalayana's name means radish. Well, we can call him radish now. At that time, his mother was rather quite miser. There was once when Madhgalayana went out, or Madhgalayana back then went out, he told his then mother, said that, well, I will have some guests over. Would you please take care of them? So after he left, the guests came over, but because the mother was very miserly, therefore she wasn't very generous with the guests in terms of inviting them and treating them. After he came back and asked her how she was, and she said, oh, I was very generous in terms of taking care of your guests. I was a very good hostess. You can see that all the pots are over here. So she used a lie to cover up her miserly action. There are many kind of examples like such happened back then. They were mothers and sons for lifetimes. And because his mother had been very very miserly for 500 years. Therefore, she reaped such kind of fruition. Just like nowadays, there are people who are very stingy, and whenever they go out with others to enjoy a meal, they would never get the check themselves. So people don't necessarily want to go out and have a meal with them anymore. I think it is really not to blame on their action, is because of their habitual patterns for lifetimes. And there are people who we can see that though they are not particularly rich, but they're very generous, and that's because of their habitual patterns for lifetimes as well. Anyhow, over here, because of his mother had been very stingy for lifetimes, therefore she was reborn in hungry ghost realm. And the Buddha said that it is not she cannot be liberated simply by your individual power. Although you're filled with filial piety and your cry shakes the heaven and earth, even the gods of heaven and the earth, evil spirits and Brahmins, bodhisattvas, and over here, the gods of earth probably means the protectors of earth, and then evil spirits, Brahmins, or the non-Buddhists, bodhisattvas, as well as the 4 gate guardians. Over here, in terms of the translation, it says practitioner. So practitioner, according to some commentary, it says that it is someone who practices on the path, which means Buddhist practitioners, as well as the 4 gate guardians can do nothing about it. So none of those said above could save your mother. And then the Buddha said that, but she can be delivered through the divine power of all the monks in the 10 directions, with the blessings and the power of the monastics, of the Sangha. The mother of Madhgalyayana can be liberated and her suffering can be alleviated. According to Vinaya Sutra, the Buddha stated that the merit of making offering to the Sangha sometimes would be the merit of making offering to the Sangha sometimes would be even greater than making offering to the Buddha. Therefore, if you were to stop someone to make offering to the Sangha, then such kind of misdeeds would be very great as well. We have to be very careful about that. When the Buddha was still in this world, he also praised the Sangha. According to the Sutra of Miscellaneous Treasures, it says that Mahaprajapati, the aunt of the Buddha, who raised the Buddha at that time, because the mother of Buddha, Queen Maya, died after 7 days of giving birth to the Buddha. So his aunt, Mahaprajapati, raised the Buddha. Anyhow, there's this story. It says that there was once Mahaprajapati wanted to make offering of a piece of clothing to the Buddha, but then the Buddha told her that it would be the best for you to make offering to the Sangha. And she was rather not too happy about that, because the clothing was made of gold, and she wanted to make that, she wanted to give that to the Buddha. And she said that I wanted to make this to you because I made this myself. I want you to use it yourself. Why do you want me to make offering to the Sangha? And then the Buddha told her, he said that because I want my aunt to gain greater merit. Why is that? It is because the merit merit field of the Sangha is vast and immeasurable. Therefore, you should do as what I've said and offer it to the Sangha. Therefore, if you have the capacity to find a pure Sangha, then out of no stinginess, no miserly aspiration, you should make offering and generate merit, even if it's just a little bit, especially after your parents passed away in special times, such as the July 15th on the lunar calendar on the Ullambana festival, or on April the 8th, or some special festivals and special dates. If you were to make offering to the Sangha, that would be very beneficial because the power of the Sangha is really great. As I've said, the blessings and the power of the Sangha is immeasurable. We can say that. We can definitely say that. The Buddha then said, well, today I will give you a teaching on how you can alleviate the suffering of your mother. Now I shall teach you the way of deliverance. I shall enable all suffering beings to be freed from pain and anxiety and from the consequences of their evil karma. We will learn that after the mother's been alleviated or delivered, Madhgalyayana would ask the Buddha, saying that could all sentient beings use such method, and the Buddha also agreed. Anyhow, today we're at a place to learn that after discovering that his mother had been born in the lower realm, therefore Madhgalyayana was quite anxious, and he ran to the Buddha in seeking of a method to liberate her. And the Buddha told him that there is really nothing else that he could do. Let it be the Buddhist practitioners or the non-Buddhist practitioners, including the celestial beings and gods. They cannot do anything because in front of karma, all of those kinds of miraculous powers are rather quite weak in contributing in the change of the karma. Therefore, there's really nothing else that you can do. But the best thing that you can do to liberate her is to practice the generation of merit, such as chanting and so on, and making offering. And at this time, it is only through relying on the merit of making offering to the Sangha then your mother can attain liberation. This time, by giving the teaching on Ullambana Sutra, on one hand, I really hope that all of you can place great importance on this sutra, and whenever you have an opportunity, you can make offering to the Sangha. Of course, if you don't have such opportunity, then you can at least chant this sutra in great focus and great attentiveness. On the other hand, I believe many of the Dharma masters, you will have the opportunity to give teachings in various places and propagate the Dharma. Therefore, I really think that if you were to give the teaching of this sutra, the Ullambana Sutra, because people know this sutra, they've at least heard of this name, but they don't really understand what it means. Could you please maybe tell us a little bit about the causes and why this Ullambana Sutra was taught? Can you tell us about the history? People once ask such questions as a Dharma master. If you cannot answer it, then it would be a little bit embarrassing. Anyhow, so I hope that after everyone studied this sutra, I really hope that you can propagate this sutra in various places. Let you be a great abbot or abbot in a small temple, a very tiny temple even if you're an abbot of only one disciple or an abbot of thousands and thousands of disciples, whomsoever you will be, I really hope that on July the 15th on lunar calendar, all of you can have a Dharma assembly, even if it's just 2 of you. So in this way, you will be able to receive the blessings. Because the Buddha told it himself, he said that this sutra is to liberate the sentient beings that are the parents to all of us. So it is it has a very profound meaning, profound teaching of the Mahayana. When we chant it, we should not think of, oh, my mother's name is so-and-so and my father is so-and-so, therefore I'm dedicating the merit of such to these parents. This is very selfish, rather. We should try to open up this heart and eventually we dedicate the merit to all the parents that we've had in lifetimes. But of course, Madhgalayana at the beginning was also very selfish. If he were to see Shariputra's mother was born in hell realm, I wonder how he would feel. Anyhow, let's stop here today.
Sonamdai tanche zubani donani bedana pamse ja kirga nanche rano chuba solen dro